Good day, everyone, and welcome to the third podcast of the Book of John with Pastor Mark and Mila Pop. Today we have a special guest on our program, and we will discuss George Orwell's novel 1984 and its relevance today. Good morning, Pastor Mark and Jonathan. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Yes. Thank you, Mila. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Good morning, Pastor Mark.
Good morning, Neela. It's great to be on the show as always, and I look forward to today's episode.
Yes, me too. It's gonna be fun.
Yes. So today we have, of course, we have Jonathan Gems, the screenwriter from the 1984, as well as Mars Attacks memoirs, and we're going to discuss today 1984 and the things from the book that seem to be a reality today. So Jonathan, I've always loved 1984. You know, the book and the movie.
Yeah.
So just tell us, are we living a real life 1984 here in 2021?
We definitely are, no question about it. I mean, George Orwell was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I mean, he anticipated exactly what's happening now. I mean, you remember in the book we have Big Brother. Big Brother is watching you. Well, we have mass surveillance now. You know, everybody's phone is tracked and traced. People are reading our emails. I mean, we're being watched all the time. And in 1984, we had we had constant propaganda in 1984, 24/7. And that's what we have today. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the UK, if you turn on the television or turn on the radio at any time, it's 24/7.
Yeah.
So that's the same. Then you had, in 1984, you had perpetual war. There was a war going on all the time. And apart from the last administration, when Trump stopped all the wars, you know, we had perpetual war. And it looks like they're starting the wars up again now. They're bringing back ISIS. They're bringing back problems in the Middle East again. So, you know, that's another thing that George Orwell got right. And then another thing he had was cult of personality. You had the Big Brother cult of personality. And that's what we've been seeing. I mean, with people like Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a massive cult of personality around Obama when he was there.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So it's really... I mean, it's amazing. I mean, in 1984, you know, they banned all the books, and that's happening today. I mean, books are being banned on the internet. Websites are being banned and deplatformed. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And you also have, you know, George Orwell invented this idea of the thought police, and we've got fact checkers now.
Yeah.
I mean, they are thought police, the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good comparison. You know, it's really crazy just how fast we've gotten to this point too. You know.
Yeah, right. I mean, another thing that I noticed was that, you know, the core of the book, you know, of 1984 book is totalitarianism, right? And the main, you know, the hero Winston Smith, he in the last chapters of the book, he's being tortured and he's being tortured and he's being tortured until finally he gets to believe something that is completely nonsensical, which is he finally, after all this torture, he absolutely believes that 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah.
And he's gotten to that point where he believes that something that's completely ridiculous, then he's released. Then he's allowed to go back to society. And I can see that happening here now with us, because we're being made to believe things that are completely nonsensical. You know, I don't know if this came up, but recently, about a week ago, in the UK, the health spokesman came out and he made a big announcement that of all the new cases, 65% were in people who were fully. And then he said, but it's a wonderful and everybody should take it so we can end the.
Wow.
I mean, that's like saying 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see, you know, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to think, you know, that they might bring some sort of like re-education camps or something, you know, to this country. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking that you're right about re-education camp, and that reminded me of communism. You know, communism is like the elephant in the room, I guess. I mean, I know some people, you know, some people are talking about it and saying, well, hey, you know, this is communism that's happening to us. And of course, that's what happened under communism, was that people who were not politically correct were put in re-education camps. And that it does look likely that might happen next if you know, if things don't change.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a scary time. It's yeah. Well, anyway, could you tell us a bit about your time working on the film adaptation of 1984? And while working on the movie, did you ever consider that so many things from the story, you know, would become a reality someday?
Well, I had a good time working on the movie. It was the first time that I'd actually worked on a proper movie. I was a playwright for about 10 years before I got this opportunity. And so it was, to be honest, it was one of the best times in my life, you know, because I'd gotten kind of a bit burnt out as far as theatre was concerned. And, you know, when you write plays and everything, you don't make any money at all. And so I was living, you know, on, you know, about $50 a week, you know. I mean, I was so poor. And so what happened was that I met this director, Michael Radford, and he had written an adaptation of 1984, and he sent it to me because I was a playwright. I was quite well-known playwright. He sent it to me for an opinion, you know. So I read it, and I said to him, listen, I'm really not the right guy for this because, you know, I don't know anything about screenplays, you know. He said, no, I just want your opinion. So I said, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So I read it, and you know, I thought it was bad, you know. And but I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. I mean, I thought, well, what do I know, you know? But so, and also, you know, I worked in the theatre for a long time, and people are very, very sensitive, and you have to be very sensitive. So, you know, when he called me, he said, well, what do you think of the script? So I lied, you know. I said, it's great. I said, it's great. It's a great script. Well done, you know. And he said, well, no, come on, tell me honestly, you know, be honest. Be honest. Tell me, you know, is there anything in there that you don't like? I want you to be completely honest. So I said, well, I think it's great, but, you know, there's a couple of little things maybe that you could improve, right? And I told him, and he blew up at me. He said, are you crazy? He said, I've shown this script to 6 other people. They all say it's brilliant. You're the only one who's criticizing it. So I said, well, I'm sorry, He said, fuck you, right? And he said, that's it. And he put the phone down on me, so I thought, well, that's the last time I'm ever going to hear from him, right?
Yeah.
And then to my amazement, about 2 weeks later, the phone rang, and it was this guy, this director, Mike Bradford. And he said, are you doing anything at the moment? I said, well, I'm just working. He said, well, I'm around the corner. I'm in a pub. Would you like to come out and have a drink? Yeah. So I thought, well, okay. So I went to this pub, and he bought me a drink, and he said, all the guys that I showed the script to, they're all guys who want to work on the movie. They're all kissing my butt. So I don't trust them. You're the only one who gave me any criticism. I trust you. Would you like to do a rewrite?
Yeah.
And I was getting about £50 a week, right, at the time. And he offered me £1,000 a week.
Wow.
So, I said, okay, sure,
Yeah.
I said, well, so how long is it going to be? He said, 3 weeks. You've got 3 weeks to rewrite it, along the lines that you said, So I said, okay, 3 weeks. That's £3,000. Great.
Wow. Yeah.
But what happened was I ended up working on the whole movie all the way through, because he was so happy with the script that he asked me to be his assistant. So I was working every day throughout pre-production and the shooting of the film, and post-production as well. So I got the most fantastic crash course in movie making, and as a result of that, I absolutely fell in love with movies. And I thought, well, that's it. Theatre is archaic, and I don't want to do theatre. I want to do movies now. And so that changed my life. And after doing that, I did another movie. I wrote another script for Michael Radford, and then after that, I did some work on the first Batman movie, which was for Tim Burton, and then in fact, Tim Burton brought me over to LA, and I spent 10 years, or nearly 9.5 years, in LA writing movies. So it was a very important event in my life. Was this movie, and making the movie. Even though when you watch the movie, it's very bleak and it's very depressing and everything.
Yeah.
But it was such a load of fun to make it. I mean, the crew was just cracking jokes all the time. It was great fun. And the actors were wonderful. I mean, Richard Burton was amazing, just amazing, and John Hurt, the who played Winston Smith, was just the most fantastic person. I mean, as well as being a great actor, he was very clever, very intelligent, very, very witty, very big-hearted. Just a wonderful guy. So, and the director was great, Mike Radford, and the producer. He was a great producer. His name was Simon Perry. He was like a Hercules. He got the whole thing done. And Richard Branson, who he financed the film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was incredible. I mean, he was so bold. I mean, he borrowed £6 million, which is today from the bank, right? Which today is equivalent of about, I worked it out, it's about $20 million today.
Oh, wow.
And, he borrowed that money to make this film. And it was a hell of a risk, but he did it. And he had a lot of problems, financially with getting that movie made. And so he was a real hero. So the whole thing was a great experience for me.
Yeah, it sounds like a very exciting opportunity. That's great that you got that chance. Um, but also, we'd like to know, how do you think the film industry has changed, in recent years, and what can be done, in your opinion, to make movies great again?
Wow. My God, that's a big question. That's really hard,
Yeah.
When I first got into movies, right, it was in the 70s. I'm in my 60s now.
Yeah.
And the films that were coming out in the 70s were absolutely brilliant. I mean, you had all these movies. I mean, the ones that I saw we were all just so excited going to the cinema. But you had films like Dog Day Afternoon, I remember, and Midnight Cowboy, Easy Rider, that just blew everybody away. And then there was, The Graduate, Carnal Knowledge. There was just like one, what was that? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Those kind of movies. I mean, they were just, Jack Nicholson seemed to be in all of them. And, but, they were just, they were coming out like every 2 or 3 months, there'd be another great movie.
Yeah.
And I think my whole generation was just so excited and turned on by the movies. And then what happened was, in the 80s, things started to change. And I think it was because you got these big multinational corporations like PepsiCo and Bronfman, the booze manufacturers, and Sony, and all these corporations. They bought the studios, and they're not interested in movies. They're interested in making money,
right?
And so, anything. And by the time, I mean, during the 80s, you still had a few good movies being made, because you had the mini majors. You had little companies like New Line Cinema. You had Samuel Goldwyn Jr. Productions. You had other companies who were putting out films like Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and these independent movies. You had the Merchant Ivory films, where they do books. They do adaptations of books by people like Henry James and stuff, and that was interesting. And you had John Waters doing independent films. You had all these interesting films. But by the 90s, by the sort of early 90s, all those little companies were either put out of business or were bought up by the big studios. So that was the end, really. I mean, it really finished. Good movies, the chance of any good movie being made was really finished by about 1993. And when I was I went to Hollywood in 1989, and I would write stories and stuff, and I would talk to executives, and they would say to me, "Oh, Jonathan, we like the story, but it's too original. It hasn't been done before. It hasn't been done before. So it's too much of a risk. We can't do." I mean, they could only do movies that have been done before.
Right.
They would. That's why you suddenly you got so many sequels. In the 90s, you got because it's too much of a risk to do something that hasn't already been a hit.
Right. Yeah.
So when I was there, it was getting bad, and then I left, around 2000, right? And so that's 20 years ago now, and it just got worse and worse after that.
Right.
So it's terrible, but the problem is distribution. What you have right now is you have 6 companies, right? You've got Disney, Warner Brothers, Fox, Paramount, Sony, and Universal, right? So you've got those 6 companies, and they control the distribution of movies. in America. They control 100% of the distribution.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to make a movie, let's say you made a great movie, it could be really wonderful, but nobody would get to see it because you don't have distribution.
That's right.
And so the only way to improve, or to answer your question, I mean, the only way to make movies good again is really to get rid of these companies. Disney, Warner Brothers, Fox, because they've got a cartel. I mean, it's essentially a monopoly because, they all work together. And they control what the people see. And so, how do you fix that problem? To me, I did have one idea. I don't know if it would work, but which is to, in America, you could do it, I think.
Yeah.
Which is what you could do is you could say to every single state, like every 50 of the 50 states in America, you could have, let's say, the governor would, or let's say the state legislature would pass a law saying that there had to be a state studio. There had to be at least, I mean, it could be it wouldn't be a government thing, but, every state would have at least one movie studio.
Yeah.
And they would pass a law saying that 10% or 20%, let's say 20% of all the movies shown in Pennsylvania have to be Pennsylvanian movies. So that would then create a secure market for the Pennsylvanian movie studio.
That's right.
And if you had 50 states with 50 studios making films which are guaranteed a certain amount of income because of this quota of 20% of the market share, then you would have like a plethora of movies being made, all kinds of different movies being made. And basically you would then have what would be a meritocracy, because the best movies, the ones that people like the most, those would be picked up by the exhibitors, by the movie houses in all the different states. So you would have a sort of decentralized system for making films, and I think that is the whole issue, is that centralization is at the core of totalitarianism. It's like once you have, like, I don't know if it's true, but I've seen on websites that apparently there are 6 companies, rather like the movie business, there are 6 companies that control the food supply in America. And so, that's really dangerous, And when the communists, when Lenin and Trotsky took over in Russia, the first thing they did was they got control of the food supply, and and of course they got control of everything. But this is what you're seeing has sort of slowly over the years has kind of happened to us, which is that we find that all of these things that we do, that we care about, that we need, things like food, things like entertainment, they've been centralized. The control has been centralized, and so we have to decentralize everything.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point you brought up. There's so, I mean, just speaking like from a movie standpoint, it's like there's just a shocking lack of originality, in today's films. And it's like like with everything, once you centralize it, it just it becomes bland. Just completely lacking of any originality. It's like
Well,
like today.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, when I was really surprised when I went to LA, and I was talking to these executives, studio executives, and they didn't like my stories, because they were too different. And they would say, read this book. It's called Screenplay, written by Sid Field. Now, this is the Bible, right? Everybody reads Screenplay by Sid Field. It's a classic book. All the screenwriters read it, all the directors read it, all the executives read it. And what this book does is it gives you the formula. And the formula is 3 acts. You have 3 acts to a movie. You have a hero, and the hero has to have an enemy. And the hero has to have a girlfriend, love interest. And the hero has to have a buddy for comic relief. And then in the first act, you set up the characters and the situation. In the second act, everything goes wrong, and the hero gets hurt, and the girl gets kidnapped or whatever. And then in the third act, the hero kills the bad guy and saves the girl. And that's the formula. Right. And for that's for action movies, right? And for romantic comedies, the formula, which I'm sure, is boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl.
Right.
So it's 3 acts, 1, 2, 3, beginning, middle, and end. The hero always wins. You always get a happy ending. The bad guy always has a spectacular death of some kind. And you have the buddy for comic relief, to have a few jokes. Right. And this is what they want,
Yeah, they want to follow a pattern.
And you see that in every movie.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just today, especially in America, it's like basically everything coming out is just it's basically a remake of something that's like a superhero thing, a superhero story that's already been remade 5 or 6 times. It's it's really it gets really nauseating here in the U.S. to find a good movie. But
it's really hard to find a good movie now.
Yeah. They're definitely not. You brought up like the 70s. That's when original, classic movies are coming out. Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You brought up, Taxi Drivers and other things in the 70s.
That was a great movie.
Yeah, it's like you would never see these movies made today. So I'd like to know also, how do you think? Do you think free artistic expression, is in jeopardy also today because of the hyper politically correct kind of society we live in? How do you feel that's had an effect on movies?
Well, that's very, very good question. That's really key, I think. It's communism again. Political correctness. A lot of people don't know this. Political correctness was invented by Vladimir Lenin.
Really?
It was one of his main contributions to Marxist-Leninism. And he was the guy who invented political correctness. And if you were a Russian and you wrote or said the wrong thing that didn't support the Communist Party, then you would be sent to a re-education camp or a mental hospital, or a prison camp, a gulag, what happened was...
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Something went off with the sound. Are you still on properly?
I'm here.
Jonathan?
We'll just wait for this to stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we could hear you, but
It'll
now...
stop in a second.
Okay.
Sorry about that. That was my fault.
Okay, that's good.
I think I needed to switch that off or something.
Okay, that's good now. We can hear you now. That's great.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, getting back, you can cut that out, right?
Yeah.
Getting back to what I was saying, yeah, Lenin invented political correctness, and they would put everybody into these gulags. And look what happened in Russia. Russia used to be just the most creative country. I mean, they had wonderful playwrights, Chekhov and Gogol, and they had great composers like Rimsky-Korsakov. You know, they had Rimsky-Korsakov and Prokofiev and Tchaikovsky and all these wonderful composers. They had great writers, you know, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and it all finished. It cancelled. The communism cancelled the culture. I mean, they cancelled everything. They cancelled. You know, they destroyed most of the churches. They murdered most of the priests. They completely destroyed the culture, and for 70 years, almost nothing came out of Russia. I mean, there was nothing, you know, and this is terrifying, and that's all because of political correctness.
Yeah, it's a dangerous thing.
So, well, that's what's killing the arts. I mean, in Europe, it's I think it's probably even worse than in America. I think America still has more freedom because in Europe, the European Union, which is really a communist organization, you know, I mean, look at France. I mean, France used to be the most productive, creative country in the world, practically. I mean, you know, the greatest painters, the greatest writers. And nothing has come out of France for years now, for decades. I mean, you know, where are the great French writers today? There aren't any. Where are the great French artists? There aren't any.
That's very true.
And I experienced it myself, you know, a little bit in the UK, because when I was a playwright, I was writing plays, you know, and they were being put on in London, and I was asked to join. I was sort of popular for a while, and I was asked to join the Arts Council of Great Britain, which is the organisation which gives money to theatres and theatre companies. Yeah. So I was going to these meetings, you know, and I was really surprised because, you know, I kept very quiet. But what I observed was that all the left wing sort of socialist plays, they were getting money. All the socialist companies, they were getting funded. And anybody who wrote a play that wasn't socialist didn't get any money, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So I saw that happening. The UK government that was providing the money for the Arts Council was definitely biased towards anything that was pro-European Union, anything that was pro-socialism.
Right. Yeah. They force the society into it that way by just, you know, getting a monopoly on things and, you know, then just forcing their will on, you know.
I mean, I mean, today in the UK, forget it. You know, if you wrote a play that was not socialist, I mean, it would never be put on, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you know, we've seen so much censorship, you know, here in America, even I mean, I know it's even worse in Europe, because you don't.
It is.
Well, here we're supposed to anyway. We're at least supposed to have the First Amendment right to free speech. It's getting trampled on a lot. It's getting overlooked. That right that we have here, it gets overlooked a lot. But
Yeah, it does.
Okay, guys, I hope you are all enjoying today's episode, and we've got plenty more to talk about. But we're going to take a small break here today and pick up where we left off next week. And if you would be interested in supporting the work we do here, Cash App donations can be made to $Box of Rain 0, as well as our Patreon, patreon.com/RealPastorMark. And of course, check out Jonathan's other work, which can be found on quotabooks.com. And also check out MarsAttacksMemoirs.com. Also, please like and subscribe this video if you haven't already. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to our next broadcast. Until then, God bless.